You're going to showboat, knock down the shot.
For what his value is, it doesn't equate to winning basketball.
When you're talking about the greatest of greats, that's what you have to do. You have to nitpick.
We'll see you in the playoffs. We'll see you in the playoffs.
Welcome, everybody, to the Tee 'em Up podcast. We are here with another edition. This is going to be our last podcast before we officially know where the playoffs are going to stand as far as how everything's going to shake out. And who would have thought that we had the idea to start everything up just a few days before the season started and that we're here now? I mean, how does this feel, man? How does it feel for you?
It's crazy because it seems like we've only been doing this a few weeks and we're only 20 games in the season, but no, we're just almost 82 games for every team played. It's crazy we've gotten this far.
Yeah, it doesn't
These
feel like
seasons fly.
They really have. And now that we've kind of had this perspective where we're kind of covering it here in the way that we're doing it on the podcast, it's like staying up to date with everything, covering everything that's going on a week to week basis, filling in on TikTok and other social media as we go throughout the week. It's been a lot of fun, but the real fun is about to start as we're getting into the playoffs. And there's one thing we know about the playoffs right now is that the Los Angeles Lakers will not be attending that party as the Lakers are done. The Lakers are done, man. And I know pretty much on every podcast that has ever existed basketball wise and or any sports podcast, pretty much everybody's talked about the Lakers on almost every single episode because let's face it, LeBron James, everybody likes to talk about him for the good, the bad, and the ugly. But Lakers are done, and I think we have a unique opportunity here on this podcast to kind of lay this season to rest a little bit before we get into the playoffs.
Lay him down gently.
Lay him down gently here. What are your takes? Lakers are done, not making the play-in. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I want to pose a question to start.
Okay.
And because I've been seeing this question float around on Twitter and stuff like that. To you, is this the most disappointing team all time?
No. I wouldn't say all time.
Yeah, I'm kind of there, but go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say my reasoning. So in the general perspective, people are going to say that just because coming into the season, I believe they're the number 2 overall favorites to win it all behind the Nets. I was one of those people. I thought it'd be interesting. I did not think by any stretch of imagination they should be the favorite, especially in the West. I did not think that was a possibility. So for me, my expectations were never that high. So I don't see this as big of a failure as some of those people out there are really trying to frame this as.
For me, they're definitely probably a top 5 most disappointing team of all time, even though I wasn't super high on them either. I think I had them 4th. Finishing 4th in the standings coming into the season. But that's still way below my expectations for where they finished. But I think they're ranked so high on a lot of people's minds just because of the personnel they brought in coming into the season and just the LeBron James effect and being champions within 2 seasons. So you're always going to have some sort of buzz regardless. But for me, the most disappointing team ever, I think still has to be maybe the 2015-16 Golden State Warriors. Cause you go 73-9 and then you almost fall in 5 games to the Thunder and then you blow a 3-1 lead in the finals. To me, that's disappointing, which is preserves in my mind, 95-96 Chicago Bulls is the greatest season of all time still to this day. So, and then probably the 0-1 Lakers right after them. But yeah, I wanted to pose that question to start us off with this Lakers debate.
Yeah, I think also just another team that comes to mind. Let's wait to see how the Nets play out, because if they get knocked out in a one and done, that to me is a very disappointing season.
Especially when they start off with James Harden. I would agree that could be. Honestly, we could already put that team into that category.
Yeah, I agree.
Of they could win. Well, I would say if they win the championship, you kind of ignore that, but. Depending where they fall in the playoffs, you could argue that just because KD, James Harden, and Kyrie had so much potential over these past 2 seasons.
They've done nothing.
Yeah, and
they've done nothing.
Harden barely made it halfway through the season. He didn't even make it to the All-Star break.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I also think about the Clippers, too. Once they added Kawhi and Paul George, haven't really done much. I know they made, the conference finals for the first time that the Clippers has ever have last year, but and to me, you go into every season when they first started, when those two joined, they're like, we're going to win a championship. And here they are. They haven't made a finals appearance. Doesn't look like they're going to make one this year. They have a chance to, but
for me, I'm not ready to put the Clippers in that category yet, just because they still have that duo. Their first season together was really disappointing. last year, I don't fault him too much because Kawhi tore his ACL before the conference finals, and then he was out all year this year, and Paul
Yeah.
George with his elbow. So I'm not ready to pass judgment on the Clippers, although it hasn't been great just based off that first season together.
Yeah, and I understand, like you said, it's a LeBron effect, and we give pretty much everybody passes for injuries besides a team that LeBron is on. And in no way do I think this season was defined by injuries. I don't think this roster fit. And I do not think Russell Westbrook was the biggest factor as far as their failures this season. But I think also they had injuries. They did. Like, let's be honest about it. LeBron got hurt. LeBron is still, I mean, he twisted his ankle, even though everybody's like, oh, he's fine. It's like any other superstar, we're like, okay, he's injured. What do you expect him to do? And a lot of the times we give them a pass. But with LeBron, we don't do this. And my take, I wrote this down just because it's been weighing on me. Normally, I'm really good as a sports media consumer where I don't really pay attention to the takes that I'm just like, oh no, that's ridiculous. Like, you're just ranting, you're just mad. That's stupid. Doesn't make any sort of sense. But I've seen a lot of things float out over the last few days from people in the media that I respect, that I look up to, that I think overall provide very good commentary. And I think it's just gone too far. Like, I'm disappointed with the way that much of the, real NBA media, when it comes to Lakers end of the season, how they've treated it so far. And the LeBron bashing to me is hit an all-time high for no apparent reason. Like, I'll be the first to say this roster didn't fit. They're old. Injuries are a concern. They were an issue. But the people who are trying to turn this season into the definition of LeBron's career are idiotic. Like, it's amazing how quick we forget. He's been in the league for 19 seasons, right? This season's record is not even a drop in the bucket for what this man has accomplished. And people who are going out there saying like, oh, nope, he can never be the GOAT just because of this reason. And oh, Kobe would have done this. And like, can we calm down on the LeBron bashing a little bit? I'll never understand why so many people want to see LeBron fail. Athletes have done terrible things on and off the court. They've been terrible people. They've been jerks. There's many that have only cared about money. Yet as NBA fans, so many of them choose to just root for the failure of a man who's created an amazing career, out of nothing, married and raised a family with his high school sweetheart, constantly looking to affect change on social justice issues and giving to those in need. It's whatever at this point. It's a battle I'm not going to win because it's been going on. It's been going on forever. And I understand that. That's the way we are as sports fans. But to me, people trying to make this as a microcosm of what LeBron's career is, to me, that is outlandish. That is ridiculous.
And I have to agree with you on that point. Like, for people to like take this way out of proportion, like say, oh, this like huge hits his career. Okay, come on. Like, let's be a little realistic. For the people that say it hurts his career a little bit, okay, maybe you're right. For the people that say it doesn't hurt his career at all, okay, maybe you're right. But the people that are saying like it's a huge ding, okay, yeah, you need to calm back a little bit. It's one season. For the people that blame this Lakers season on LeBron because this is the team he wanted, these are the guys he wanted to play with, I think that's a fair argument. For the people that say you really can't fault it too much because of injuries, I kind of think that's a fair argument as well, because we've given a lot of other teams passes on injuries, like the Chicago Bulls, the Denver Nuggets, even though obviously those teams are in the playoffs. But that's a different conversation we can have. Regardless of where the Lakers would have been, injuries or not, this season wouldn't have been too great. Maybe they could be in the playoffs or the play-in. They probably would have had a more of a complete season from their three guys.
Oh yeah.
I saw this great graphic and I can't find it. I scoured Twitter all afternoon looking for it. Couldn't do it. I should have liked it or retweeted it, saved it, something like that. But I do have partial stats. The Lakers' big three played 21 games together. They won 11-10 in that stretch. That's pretty average. So people are like, that's a pretty small sample size. It's 25% of the season. It's a decent window into what this team possibly could have been. The Lakers were 25-31 with LeBron on the floor, 17-23 with AD, and 31-47 with Westbrook. A lot of people are pointing to, the Lakers are bad because AD missed most of the season. Well, when he was there, they still had a negative record. So yeah, this team, it wasn't a good fit. And to be quite honest, where the Lakers are right now, where LeBron James is in his career right now, and where he wants to be in the future, it would be in the best interest of the Lakers to just move on from this core after this season.
Who would that be? Like, oh, you talking? You move on from LeBron?
Yeah, move on from LeBron.
You're in that camp now. Okay.
I think you blow it up. And here's why. The Lakers brand is bigger than any one player.
Mm-hmm.
And they shouldn't tie themselves down to LeBron because that's going to be to the detriment of their franchise. They already don't have a lot of their assets, their future assets, which is a problem. But they're in a position right now where they can risk giving up more of those future assets to try to build one last team to go for it all with LeBron James. And I don't think they should do that. If they can get rid of Westbrook's contract, do it. Take any offer as long as it's not getting rid of future assets. Do whatever you can. AD, we've seen this season and we've seen the past 2 seasons. It's too much of a gamble to gamble on his health and to build a team around him and hope that you can ride with him all season. He put a lot of weight onto his body this year. You could kind of see it. And I think it hurt his game, honestly. I think AD playing thinner, it was probably healthier for him. All the added weight probably put a lot of stress on a body that rarely plays up to 70 games in a season. And then that's been the way his whole career. I think you try. AD could be a good trade piece because the team might be willing to give up real assets, whether it's picks or young players, for AD to add to a potential contender. And I think that'd be a great move. Now, here's the tricky part. What do you do about LeBron? Because the Lakers are always super, super, super loyal to their superstars. I mean, obviously, you saw how Kobe's career ended. They weren't going to move the man or get rid of him for nothing. Like, they're like, your family, Kobe, you're a Laker. We'll ride it out with you however you want to do it. Whether that means we're going to be in obscurity for like 3 to 4 or 5 years after you're gone, we're going to do that.
Which they were.
And they did that. But the difference was Kobe was family. Kobe had been there since 1996.
I understand. Kobe's different. No, I completely understand.
You look at LeBron James. He's not like any other Lakers superstar before.
No.
Sure, Kareem wasn't there since the beginning, but Kareem was there
in his prime.
And he was there a good 12, 13 seasons.
Oh, yeah. No, he got there in his
5 championships with them.
Mm-hmm.
LeBron, he brought him a championship. I mean, it's a bubble championship, so say what you will. No. Hear me out. It would have been the same for any other team that won it. At the end of the day, a championship's a championship, but it wasn't a title won in front of the fans. It wasn't. They couldn't have a parade and stuff like that. So how endeared to how much does that championship mean to the Lakers franchise and the fan base? Obviously, they're like, oh well, we won the chip, which no one could say anything against them. But like that chip doesn't probably carry as much weight as like the 2009 championship for the Lakers or the 2001 championship or any championship before that. The Lakers really don't owe LeBron anything. They tried it his way and their franchise collapsed. They lost valuable pieces like Caruso. They lost they lost a lot of young guys trained for AD, which yes, it worked out. They won a championship, but now you don't have those guys to fall back on when LeBron's going to leave. He's going to go to whatever team Bronny's going to go to. So if there's a way to mutually part ways for the Lakers with LeBron after this season, I think they should look into exploring that because LeBron's at the point of his career where he's going to move on. So what stars are going to come to the Lakers this summer and be like, yes, I want to come play with LeBron, but LeBron's going to leave in 2 years. And we saw how this dumpster fire went with AD and Westbrook this season. Why would I want to go into that situation?
Man, there's so many things in that I want to push back.
It's such a complicated. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, there's so many things. Okay, I get it. The Lakers are a incredibly historic franchise. They're right up there with the Boston Celtics as far as the cream of the absolute crop.
The Celtics.
You can make that argument. I'm just saying those two are the top.
A1A, 1B.
That's fantastic. The most recent memory of the Los Angeles Lakers is the team that was the worst team in the NBA post Kobe. Dr. Buss the famous owner of the Los Angeles Lakers. I just looked it up. He passed away in 2013. Since 2013, they have won a playoff series in one season. The season that they won it all with LeBron James. When LeBron showed up to the Lakers, everybody likes to say LeBron showed up, sent everybody packing, and that's just what he does. Because we had this. You had nothing before LeBron came there. They didn't have anything. They were a bad team. They had that young core. They weren't doing anything. Yeah, but they were showing gradual improvement. That's great. But when it comes to the NBA, if you don't accelerate that, your gradual improvement is going to age where it's time for them to get paid. And then half the people are going to leave anyways. And as far as like trying to salvage what you have, I don't think it's anything to be salvaged. This is, you want to contend for championships. What they have right now is a 2027 first round draft pick, and they have the people that's on the roster. That's essentially what they have right now, in the immediate 5-year future or something like that. LeBron didn't come in and just say, listen, I don't care what anybody else is doing. And as far as this roster, like, he wanted to keep Alex Caruso, but Jeannie Buss decided, I don't want to pay the luxury tax. I don't want to pay Alex Caruso for the money that we have left, even though Caruso was willing to come back for less money. That's not a LeBron decision. He wanted Caruso. LeBron also said that he wanted Kyle Lowry, and they didn't want to pursue a trade for Kyle Lowry. Then once that passed, then obviously they went to Russell Westbrook. The one big mistake LeBron made is put his eggs in Russell Westbrook's basket. I will totally agree with that. He picked the wrong guy. He should have picked DeMar DeRozan, and obviously it's so easy to sit here and look back.
I'm so thankful.
No one thought DeMar DeRozan was going to have the season that he had, but still, even if he was normal DeMar DeRozan, he was going to be better than what Russell Westbrook was for the fit of this roster. Still don't think DeMar is a perfect fit because LeBron works best with shooters. DeMar DeRozan is not a three-point shooter, but he can definitely score. There's no doubt about that. But to act like the Lakers most recently have been this great franchise and LeBron showed up and just mortgaged everything for one championship, I got to push back on because they were doing nothing. They weren't doing anything. So what's the point? What's the point?
No, I understand that. And taking LeBron was the best thing the Lakers have done in over a decade. Oh, I shouldn't say over a decade. They won in 2010, so that's not too long ago. But I'm saying they shouldn't continue to mortgage their future with LeBron. Like what they did with LeBron was a success because they won the championship. That is the ultimate goal.
Mm-hmm.
But his Lakers tenure has been probably the least spectacular Lakers tenure since probably any Laker from the 1950s or early 60s. I mean, because if you look at it, 4 seasons, missed the playoffs, won the finals, then you lose in the first round, and then you miss the play-in, which LeBron has criticized in the past, and ironically now he's not even benefiting from it anyway.
Yeah.
This project, like, it can't go any farther because he's going to leave whenever Bronny comes in the NBA. And that's a whole nother subject because Bronny probably won't and should not be coming out of college his first year because I just don't think he's going to be that good. So it's going to be interesting to see how long LeBron holds up. There's also what we've seen with LeBron this season. We don't know how his body's going to hold up because we're starting to see a trend where LeBron can't do it like he's done before. Sure, he can go on that stretches where he's hitting like 2 50-point games in the same week. But then maybe the next week he's out with ankle injuries and he's out 4 games in a row.
Yeah, and what he's done up until this point is something no one's ever done. He's never stayed as healthy for as long as anyone in the history of the NBA.
But what happens time and time again, Father Time is undefeated. We thought Dwayne Wade was Father Time, and he was never going to fall apart. Father Prime.
Don't disrespect Father Prime right there.
No, I love Dwayne Wade.
No,
He's
I know
one
what
of
you're saying.
my favorite players, but eventually Dwayne Wade broke down. Tim Duncan aged. I wouldn't say he broke down, but he aged. Even Michael Jordan, when he returned for the Wizards, wasn't the same player, tore his meniscus and was battling injuries almost his whole tenure there to where they couldn't get into the playoffs. No player has been able to defeat Father Time. And I think we're starting to see a catch up to LeBron, even though the production is still there when he's healthy. It's just, that's the thing. When he's healthy, and how long is that health going to continue?
No, I get it. I get that you're worried about that, but I will push back on I think, and I might be in the minority here, but he loves to bang on Russell Westbrook. The biggest problem for the Lakers this year, besides injuries, besides Russell Westbrook, has been the ineffective play by Anthony Davis. Like Anthony Davis deserves equal credit for this. The whole plan was you're going to ascend. You're going to become a top 5 player that everybody thought that you were definitely going to be moving into your prime. He has not held up his end of his bargain. LeBron is supposed to be the best number 2 in the league right now. That was the plan. But now LeBron's going out there getting criticized for scoring 30 points when it's like, who else is going to? Like, I get it. Everybody loves to say it's empty points, blah, 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 all these other things. But at this point, what was he supposed to do? He had to just turn on the Jets and just try to score because that's the only thing like that he could do this season. So I just think a lot of the criticisms, I'm not saying you specifically, but I'm saying a lot of the criticisms I'm seeing out there have just gone ridiculously too far, in my opinion.
No, I completely agree with that Anthony Davis point. Anthony Davis, and I champion this. I take this as a victory. I've never been high on Anthony Davis. Why the hell is he on the all-time NBA 75 team? The man missed the playoffs half of the last decade yet. Yeah. Like people like the Associated Press released their all-decade team. It was like Curry, LeBron, Harden, Durant, and Dirk. Dirk, I don't really like on that team because he didn't really play well towards the end of the decade because he aged and wasn't make the playoffs. But then people were like, well, why isn't Davis on there? I'm like, what did I miss? Was I asleep for half the decade? Davis won like 1 playoff series, maybe 2, until he joined LeBron on the Lakers. Like Davis's career wasn't spectacular. No, and it's not like those.
He's talented.
Yeah, he's very talented. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But he hasn't done anything.
No, I agree.
Besides 2020. And he has not taken that next level.
I agree 100%.
That's why I'm saying Lakers, whether they move on from LeBron or not, Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook need to go. Because I think LeBron has a better shot if some team or there's a 3-team trade where Davis goes one way and either picks or solid role players, like maybe a bunch of shooters, come back to the Lakers that you could surround LeBron with. Because then maybe you have a team where you're not relying on Anthony Davis's health, and LeBron's health might be there, might not be. More likely will be than not. Like he'll probably play more games than he won't. And then you have a team built around him, which a full shooter should always be built around LeBron.
Of course.
And then maybe you have a situation where it's like Jokic with the Nuggets this year, where LeBron just carries a team into the playoffs.
Of course.
Because I think that's a much better plan than running it back with AD again.
No, that's an argument. It's not one that I would make to try to fix the Lakers, but I completely respect it. But speaking of fixing the Lakers, that kind of leads us into our next topic is kind of the most recent rumors. Obviously, everybody thinks Russell Westbrook. Actually, I should rephrase this. Everybody besides Russell Westbrook thinks that he won't be playing with the Lakers, but Russell keeps saying, oh, I'd love a chance to run it back another 82, which is, sorry, dude, it's not going to happen. But the latest rumor is the Charlotte Hornets are interested in Russell Westbrook. So, Jared, what's your take when you heard this, when you got the Bleacher Report notification or however you got it across your phone?
Well, when I saw that, I put a whistle in my mouth and I threw on my white and black stripes because I am ready to tee up the Hornets and Michael Jordan if that move happens this summer. MJ, you finally started to figure this owner thing out. You drafted LaMelo Ball, the first Hornets player probably since Larry Johnson and Alonzo Mourning to make an all-star team within their first 2 seasons. Gordon Hayward's playing well. Miles Bridges is a stud. You're figuring it out. Don't take Westbrook. Don't take on that $44 million for 1 year. I get he's a Jordan Brand guy. I get it. He'll draw some He'll draw some attention. He'll draw some money. And your team will be talked about for better or worse with Russell Westbrook. But you got LaMelo Ball. I don't like him, but he works. You're so close to potentially putting together a team that's competing in the East. You're doing okay, MJ. We're all starting to forget about the Bobcats. Don't do a Bobcats move. This is a Bobcats move.
Those Bobcats.
Don't do it.
Dude,
whatever you do.
This MJ, move excites me. This excites me a lot.
And this bails out the Lakers. You don't bail out the Lakers. Don't bail out LeBron.
Someone's going to.
Don't
Someone's
help the
going
Lakers because this. Oh, don't. And who do the Hornets give up? What do the Hornets give up? Because they don't have that much cap space. Like, what are they sending Gordon Hayward, which would be a great player, I feel like, to have next to LeBron. He plays small forward. LeBron plays point or power forward. That's a shooter. That's another guy that can take some scoring load off. What's the move? The Hornets are building towards
Kelly
something.
Oubre, and for a second, I was going to say Trez. He ends up back on the Lakers.
This better be like an Adam Scheffner, like, where the hell are you getting this information kind of thing?
No, this is legit, and this excites me. You know, the Lakers, they've made a lot of bad decisions when it comes to their roster in recent years, but keeping Russell one more season would be absolutely catastrophic. I think everybody knows that on this planet, besides Russell Westbrook himself.
They might not have a choice, though.
I do not blame Russell for the ending of the Lakers season, but he just doesn't fit for the guys they have and the way that they want to play, especially around LeBron, excuse me. This is where I differ from what you said in the previous segment. For the Lakers, I feel their best way to regroup is to start fresh with AD and with Braun. I get younger and focus on shooting is the way that I see it. They have a lot of one-off contracts that are about to come off because pretty much all they can afford to do is sign people for 1 year, except for Kendrick Nunn, who gets a player option, who's going to pick it up, who played absolutely 0 games this year.
Smart move for him.
Being a Miami Heat fan, I was excited for him going to the Lakers. I thought it was a very underrated, really good pickup, and he proved me wrong on that one. He was almost my TM up for this week, so I'm lucky that I moved him off, but I had to get him in there. I like Malik Monk. You try to keep him, but you got to get rid of bad contracts, get younger, focus on shooting. But for Charlotte, I think it's an awful move. It would be a terrible move, but it's what Charlotte would do. Like, it's something Charlotte would do. I traditionally love the idea of bringing in a star to try to, complete a young collection of talent, try to push them over the edge. Traditionally, I like that move, but that guy's not Russ, at least not anymore. It's not Russ. If these reports are true and the Hornets acquire Russ and this all falls apart, I just want everybody to keep that same LeBron GM energy for your man MJ. I want us to keep all that the same energy and just pile the whole GM stuff onto him because it's just going to get passed along. And if anything, that'd be worse because he would have to listen to everybody criticize LeBron for wanting Russ and then go, oh, I'd take that guy. So I just think this has disaster written all over it. If I'm Charlotte, I think it's hilarious. If it happens, someone's going to end up with Russ. I don't know who it's going to be, but someone's going to end up with him. It's not going to be the Lakers.
He's almost like that bad white elephant gift.
Someone's got to have him.
But like he's going to be like, like how like families maybe have like once you're over 21, but still have family birthday parties, like when you hit like 30 or 40 and you just get those shit gifts that just keep getting passed around. Like year after you're like, oh, I got this guy a gift that like Uncle Nelson got for his 80th. Well, that's essentially what Westbrook is right now. He's the shit family gift that's going to get passed around. For MJ's sake, don't do it.
You got this, Jordan. If anybody can make him work in Charlotte, it is you. You are the greatest to ever do it. And you can make an argument. You're the greatest GM to ever do it. And I wish you the best of luck.
No one
wish you the best of luck moving forward with that. Congratulations, Michael Jordan, who is the now owner or who is the owner of the soon-to-be Russell Westbrook led
hasn't happened
Charlotte
yet. There's still hope.
Hornets. It's going to happen, and I look forward to the future in Charlotte. So,
are you locking that in? Are you locking that in?
No, I'm not locking it in yet. I'm speaking it into existence. There's a difference. Let's move on a little bit. So, let's move on to some hypothetical play-in predictions. So the final seeding for some of these has not quite been locked yet, but we know who the 4 teams are going to be in both the East and the West and how things are going to shake out. So some of you who doesn't know how the play-in tournament works. So basically what's going to happen is the people who are 9 and 10 are going to play each other. The loser of that game is gone. They're gonzo. The winner of that game will go on to face the loser of the 2 teams that play in the 7 and the 8 game. The winner of the 7 and 8 automatically becomes the 7 seed, and then the winner of that other game will automatically become the 8th seed. So let's start in the Eastern Conference. So right now we got the Cavaliers, who are game up on the Nets, and the Hawks, who are both tied. But right now the Nets have the tiebreaker against the Hawks, and then the Hornets look like they're pretty much locked in at that number 10 spot. So Jarrett, just how do you kind of see these things playing out? I know the Nets and the Hawks could change which game they're going to play depending pretty much on any day that goes on now until we get to the rest of the season. But how do you kind of see that first round shaking out?
So I'll start with the 7-8. As we've seen the past couple of weeks, the Cavaliers are in a free fall. It's definitely helped my team, the Chicago Bulls, as it's locked us into staying out of the play-in. And they're going against the best player in the NBA in Kevin Durant, and then Kyrie Irving. And Kyrie Irving can play in Cleveland, so that's not good for the Cavs. They're going to get eliminated by the Nets, or I'm sorry, not eliminated. They're going to fall into the make it or go home for the 8th seed playing game against the winner of the Hawks Hornets, because they have no one's that's going to keep up with KD. They have no one that's going to keep up with Kyrie. It's going to be Kyrie versus Garland, and Kyrie's just going to outdo whatever Garland can do offensively on the floor.
Okay.
So the Cavaliers are going to fall into the winner of the Hawks Hornets game. I think that's going to be the Hawks, just based off the Hawks experience and just how Trae Young seems to take it to another level in the playoffs. Because he seems like early in his career, he's one of those players that's built for the moment.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think the Cavs are honestly going to get eliminated by the Hawks. Just the way the Hawks are hot. They're 7-3 in their last 10, and the Cavs are the exact opposite of that in their last 10. They're not going to have Jared Allen. It's going to be a tall task for the Cavs to make the playoffs, and it's kind of sad that this is what I don't like about maybe the Hawks are more worthy of a team in the playoffs, just based on their roster health versus the Cavs right now. But it just sucks to see a team that's in the 7th seed fall out of the playoffs. But that's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
So I expect the Nets to be the 7th seed and the Hawks to be the 8th seed as we start the NBA playoffs in the Eastern Conference.
Okay. I see things shaking out a little bit differently. The way that I'm seeing the schedules line up, I have the Hawks overtaking the Nets for the 8th seed as we kind of go down the stretch. I think the Hawks at the end of the day will be in the win, and you're the 7th seed. And I like the Hawks over the Cavs in that game. So I have the Hawks in as my 7th seed. So that sends to me. Oh, wait, excuse me. I went by that a little bit backwards, but it's all right. So I have the Nets playing the Hornets in that kind of, if you lose, you go home. I have the Nets beating the Hornets. I'm not crazy there. So I have the Nets then moving on to face the Cavaliers in the winner go home game. And I have the Nets, unfortunately, winning. I think same thing as you. So I have the same two teams, but I have them flip-flopped. And to me, that that lines up Miami versus Brooklyn round 1. You might say that's not ideal for my team, but I think it's a good chance for them to knock them out real quickly and just move on to the next round.
Honestly, in the East, any series is going to be a good series.
Oh, yeah.
Even whoever faces the Raptors, just because the Raptors are they're a team that's not going to go away, and they're just going to be a pain in the ass to whoever plays against them. This is going to be the probably the most exciting Eastern Conference playoffs probably since the late 90s.
Oh, it's going to be exciting. And so I'm glad we have the same two teams in there, but we have them flip-flopping as far as their position goes. Yeah. So we'll see how that all shakes out. So now moving on to the West. So we got Minnesota as the 7 seed. They are locked in there at the 7 seed. They will not be moving. And so are the Clippers there at the 8. So we could see a little movement, but I think in the Western Conference, we know who the teams are going to be. It just comes down if the Pels and the Spurs, which one's going to be home, which one's going to be away. So it doesn't matter. So we're going to see Minnesota versus Clippers. We're going to see the Pelicans versus the Spurs. So how do you see that shaking out?
I'm predicting we see playoff P. Paul George hasn't looked too bad since he's come back, especially his first game out. And he gave the Bulls a run. That's for sure. So I've liked what I've seen from Paul George so far. I think the Clippers just have more experience, whereas the Timberwolves, they're just happy to be in playoff contention this season. I see the Clippers taking that game, moving up to the 7th slot. And then between the Pelicans and the Spurs, Pelicans have been hot lately. I think the Pelicans have more depth than the Spurs, where the Spurs is basically mostly all DeJounte Murray. CJ McCollum has taken on the leadership void that's been left by Zion not playing, and Ingram just kind of having not much of a progression from when he was an all-star. But the Pelicans have Ingram, they have McCollum. for whatever reason, Zion's stepdad thinks that Zion will play this season. So off chance that we see Zion Williamson in a playing game, I don't think that's going to happen, but maybe if the Pelicans make the playoffs, we could see that. So I see him being the Spurs facing off against the Timberwolves in the winner go home game for the 8th seed. I'm willing to bet Pelicans pull it off. They sneak in and get that 8th seed. I'm willing to put eggs in the Pelicans basket.
So you got Clippers 7, New Orleans 8.
Yes,
that's what you're predicting.
I'm a big believer that Jimmy Butler was right, and they need him. They need him, but too bad he's on the Heat in the 1st seed, and there's nothing they can do about it.
Oh wow. I think you're dead wrong, man. So Minnesota Clippers. I'm high on Minnesota a little bit. I think Minnesota has the idea, or has the chance to make a little noise going in there. It's obviously going to be a very tough matchup, whoever ends up out of it, because you're going to be facing the Grizzlies and the Suns, probably the 2 best teams in the NBA this year. So no easy task for either of these guys. But
no one's making it out of the first round.
Oh, exactly. But I got Minnesota. I got Minnesota winning that game against the Clippers, going up to the 7th seed. As far as, I'll agree with you with the Spurs and the Pelicans, though. I think the Pelicans are a better overall team than the Spurs, especially we don't know how DeJounte Murray in his injury status, if he will even have a chance to play in that game, or if they're just going to shut him down for the rest of the season. So I got the Pelicans in that one. And then the Clippers and the Pelicans, I like the Clippers. I think the Clippers are a very good roster who has just been missing their stars, who I think have underachieved. But I think the Clippers have a pretty good roster that we overlook. And it's easily the best roster in LA, but that's not saying much. So I think it's going to stay the way it is. I think Minnesota gets in as the 7. I think the Clippers get in there as the 8 seed is the way that I see this thing shaking out over there in the West. So we'll see how things happen. The next time we talk to you guys, we'll be able to kind of break down everything, as we'll be right past the play-in games. We'll know who those 2 teams are, and we'll be able to break down each match. We'll probably just spend 40 minutes on that and just run through it. So
yeah. It's exciting to see who's closer, because our predictions are different. We have some of the same teams in. We both have the Clippers, and we both have the Nets
and the Hawks. Yeah,
we flipped the Hawks. Flipped those 2. Right. So it'll be interesting to see who's right.
You got Minnesota. You got both 7s dropping completely out of them. So it's interesting to see if that happens. I have the Cavs doing it as well, but I think Minnesota gets in.
The Timberwolves franchise.
I do.
Not a believer.
I believe this.
Never have been.
I'll tell you what franchise I believe in, though, and that is any franchise that has Chris Paul on it. That is a great transition that I just did there. So Chris Paul, has helped power the Suns to a franchise record in wins. So I'm curious, just real quickly, do you think historically has the NBA media undervalued the point guard?
Yes and no, because I feel like Chris Paul is always valued for his contributions. But he's moved around a lot more as he's gone up there in years in the NBA. So I think whenever he's in a new location, we don't expect his impact, and we do this every time. We don't expect his impact to be as great as it has been. I mean, when we saw the Rockets move on from Chris Paul, the Clippers move on for Chris Paul and sending him to the Rockets, we knew it was a good move for the Rockets, although we kind of questioned the fit with him and James Harden, because Harden, you can say as a point guard, excels with the ball in his hands, where Chris Paul is the purest definition of a point guard. And that worked out pretty well for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. I mean, Chris Paul somehow helped that team get to a better record than even Hakeem Olajuwon could get that franchise to. And then went to the Thunder. We're like, oh, is this like kind of the end of Chris Paul? I mean, you're getting set to the Thunder. He's already like 36. Like, what does he have left in the NBA? And he somehow took that Thunder team and almost put him past the first round, something Westbrook and Paul George could not do in their time together. And he almost beat Westbrook. He almost beat the team that sent him off in a very competitive Game 7. And no one expected the Thunder to be where they were that season. And then, boom, he's in Phoenix. We're like, all right, Phoenix might be a playoff team. They've struggled. And then he takes them to the NBA Finals. Yeah. Maybe injuries fell their way where it helped them, like in the series against the Clippers and the series against the Jazz.
And the
But
Lakers.
and the Lakers, yes.
Yeah.
But I think they had a shot to win all of those series with any of those teams at full health. And this season validates that because it's almost the same roster, the same entire roster. And Chris Paul has just proved time and time again, do not undervalue, do not bet against him. He's almost like LeBron in a way. Just never bet against LeBron because it never works out. I always hope LeBron goes home early. And I think that's only worked out for me twice in my time sports hating LeBron. And I want to make that clear. Sports hate. He's one of the best figures in sports. Let's not be stupid about that. He is.
No,
I sports hate him because for what he did against my Bulls all this year.
Yeah. I think the media is absolutely undervalued Chris Paul. I mean, he's had an incredible career. His numbers speak for himself. Most of all, his clutch ability, his ability to handle the ball down the stretch. You know, he's not a turnover machine. He's a 20-20 guy just waiting to happen. Have one of those perfect nights, 0 turnovers, 20 assists. He's done that, I believe, a couple times, if I'm not mistaken. I know at least once.
He's like well known for that 0 turnover, high assist game.
He is amazing. I think we knock on him a little bit. And it's intentional, but it's just kind of like because he's not a prolific scorer. He's not that guy. He's not going to drop 30 points a night. And that's all right. You could be a great NBA player who's not leading your team in scoring, who's not scoring the highest total every single night. As great as he is on the court, his leadership really is what makes him the most valuable. And it's so unique in his own way to me, you touched on it. When he led that Thunder team to the playoffs that was supposed to be tanking, was supposed to not be competing, it clicked for me. Like, I always thought he was a great player. I always thought he was a great point guard, probably one of the best point guards to ever do it. We've had some great ones, obviously, in the NBA. He's such a different type of player. He's smaller. He's such an accurate passer. You know, he's not a great shooter. He's a good shooter. He's not a great shooter, but it clicks with me, man. He's an all-time great. He's hands down. He's first ballot. I don't think anybody's really denying that. I think even without a ring, I think he's in. No question. I think the ring obviously is just a personal thing for him that he'd love to grab. And a lot of people around the league would love to see him get as well. So he's now been a part of the Hornets, the Clippers, the Rockets, and now the Suns' all-time highest win seasons. The point guard deserves his respect, and I'm glad to see that he's starting to get a little bit more recognition out there. So moving on, let's move on to our team up. Jarrett, who gets your technical foul this week?
Well, the Nets are back in this week's team up.
Oh, okay.
But they're not alone.
Okay.
Every player, every ref, anyone associated with what was going on in the game at that time in the Nets versus Rockets you might know what sequence I'm talking about. Someone should have done something, because what the hell was that? Starts down, Rockets have the ball. Sengun is getting boards left and right. Jalen Green, I think. No, it was Kevin Porter Jr. attempted a three, bounced off. Rockets got the rebound. Sengun gets it, shorts it in an easy little floater inside. Bounces off. He gets it. He gets hacked to pieces. Refs don't call anything. They could have just ended this nightmare right there. KD gets the ball, falls on the ground, he just slips. It was weird. Nets fans probably had a heart attack. It was just with the way KD's gone down and over the past 3 seasons. He gives it off to Drummond, who people were probably holding their breath as Drummond's dribbling down the floor. Kind of does a nice little dish. It was maybe to Kyrie or Bruce Brown. I can't even remember. I'm just going off memory because I saw this clip the other day. I think someone attempted a shot. Somehow Drummond gets the board on the side, goes to put it back up. He gets hacked and misses. It looked like an old dude that used to be a dunker inside going up, but went up kind of weak. Well, he didn't know if he was going for a layup or a dunk. Missed that, and just it was a mess of a play. The refs probably could have called 20 fouls. Both teams should be ashamed of just that showing. It's that was an all-time sequence of just bad. And everyone on the floor should be ashamed. Technicals to everybody. Ejecting everybody, new refs, new fives from either side. Just that was bad, awful.
That was bad, and it's funny that you're teeing up pretty much whole teams, because I'm teeing up an entire team as well besides one player.
That's the theme.
And I'm teeing up the Utah Jazz outside of Rudy Gobert. Listen, I'm not a Rudy Gobert fan. I'm actually very far from it. Like I am not a Rudy Gobert guy, but listen, what this team is doing to him is absolute sabotage. Like I am seeing clips of this man posting up a guy that is it looks like a third of his height, and they're refusing to pass him the ball. It is absolutely ridiculous. He like Donovan Mitchell, who has the ball in his hand the majority of the time that they're on offense because he's their best player, he's the best guard on the team, passes him the ball twice in a game, not assists. He doesn't average 2 assists to Rudy. He passes total to Rudy Gobert twice in a game. Like, I get it. Rudy Gobert is not my ideal type of big man, especially in today's NBA. He is still he's a very good player. I don't know if he's great.
You almost said great. I almost heard you say
almost
great.
Did. He's a very good player. I will give him that. He's no chump. But what's happening to him is absolute sabotage. You got to feed your big man, especially when he's a big man who doesn't create his own shots. He is not a perimeter threat. You have to feed him the ball, especially when he's got a matchup. And when he's got a matchup, it's supposed to be easy points for you. You got to feed it. I don't know what's going on in this locker room. The situation is getting ugly fast. They're going to disappoint in the playoffs. And if I'm Rudy at the end of this season, if they're a first round and out, heck, even a second round and out, which I think they are one of those two options. If I'm Rudy, I'm saying, get me out of here, because this team is for some reason crumbling around him and he is the odd man out, which I don't know how you fix that at this point. So might be time for a fresh start for Rudy Gobert.
I am totally behind you on this team up. I saw a stat going along with like the Russell passes to him like 2 times a game.
Yeah.
Joe Ingles, who hasn't been on the team since December, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm going off the top of my head when
it's been a while. Yeah,
leaving towards ACL. Joe Ingles has more passes to Rudy Gobert this season. Hasn't been on the team. He's on Portland's bench right now. Has more passes between him and Gobert than Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. Those are your 2 best players. I don't care what their relationship is off the court. We know it's not good. We know it's not great. It's been that way since the 2020 season. But there has to be some sort of relationship, some sort of coexistence on the floor. If you want this team to get over the hump that is basically in this, okay, this is it. We have to do something this year or tear it down. And this is not the way you handle it. Honestly, the Jazz better be kind to Rudy Gobert, because what players outside of Karl Malone and John Stockton that are star players and all-stars want to stay in Utah? Because we know Donovan Mitchell has his sights set elsewhere. Yeah. I'd be shocked if Donovan Mitchell is going to be here next year. And Rudy Gobert, you could figure out a way to build around him. Be kind to him. This is not going to work out. But if you want to keep some semblance of solid players on the roster, figure out how to keep Rudy Gobert happy, because the Mitchell situation in my mind is too far gone. Shame on you, Donovan Mitchell. I am all behind this tee up. Like I'm fighting back against the fans on this. I got your back, man.
Oh man, that's all we have this week for the TMO podcast. Thank you guys all for joining us. We'll be sure to follow along all week long for some fun content on all of our social media platforms. We'll be back next week with another episode, and we'll know our playoff seedings. We'll know all that stuff, and I'm sure we'll probably spend the entire podcast breaking it down. So thank you guys all for joining us, and we'll catch you guys next time.